This is Hannibal from the Hannibal TV.com live Saturday, December 21st at 2:15 a.m. I have some Bellator news. They had a big show in Hawaii tonight that featured oftentimes pro wrestlers wrestling for New Japan and Impact, a few other places in the US. He's part of this blood sport that's having a show WrestleMania weekend, and a frequent training partner and trainer of Great North Wrestling, the Hannibal TV champion, Davey Boy Smith Jr. Anyways, he was supposed to fight tonight in Bellator against Ronnie Marks. He was, of course, Barnett was also former UFC champion. So he had his first major fight in a while here. And apparently he was not cleared by the commission for some reason. I guess he wasn't healthy enough. He might have a cold or something, but he was not cleared to fight, unfortunately. This is despite doing an open workout just a couple of days ago where he basically had a professional wrestling match with his trainer, Eric Hammer, in the open workout. I actually watched it. Someone shared it on Twitter. And they basically had a wrestling match on the grass outside a hotel that Barnett won, and he didn't look very sick there, but I don't have any doubt that he would have fought if he was cleared. The Real Frisco says Edge returning to WWE. I do have some more news on that. I talked about it yesterday. He signed a really nice new contract, I guess, recently, and he did perform a spear last summer on TV, which tells you that he would have been cleared for that because you haven't seen Paige do anything physical since her injury. But he is claiming that he's still not medically cleared to have a full wrestling match, despite hinting that he feels like he's ready to return again and signing a new contract. But, I mean, he's not going to say it if they want it to be a surprise either. And they like surprises. So definitely he's re-signed. He's not going to AEW. He signed an extended contract. So don't expect Edge to go anywhere. And who knows, he could wrestle very well. Dana Brooke, I'm not really familiar with her, but she's also signed a new 5-year deal. They're signing lots of people to 5-year deals. I'm going to give a quick daily news rundown. There's not much daily news today. And yesterday, I was doing my Wrestling Observer review that I do every week. But I got a lot of fan questions, and I ended up just cutting it without giving all the news because it was going on too long and it was too late. So I will read the rest of the news that I took notes on from the Wrestling Observer today as well. But in other news, Chris Jericho's AEW segments have never been beaten by NXT yet. So he's definitely their biggest star. AEW sold out their next pay-per-view, which is going to be in Chicago. That's their first sellout since Philadelphia back in October. Now that pay-per-view is being done in Chicago in conjunction with a huge Comic-Con. Therefore, there's a lot of people coming to town that weekend, so that probably had something to do with helping the sellout. It probably wasn't that video that's all over the internet today of one of the Dark Order punching Dustin Rhodes and missing him by like literally that much, similar to how bad Tyson Fury was missing Braun Strowman in the live version of the Raw where they had their confrontation. The edited version cleaned it up a bit. But yeah, there's a Dark Order member missing Dustin Rhodes by a significant amount with punches, and you see Dustin Rhodes selling the punches. So he did. It was in the Wrestling Observer yesterday. Dustin Rhodes wants to open a wrestling school in Texas. Now, maybe he should teach. I don't know how he's going to teach wrestlers not to sell punches that aren't hitting you. I don't know. I was always taught not to sell punches that are missing you. But whatever. Motor Sash says AEW is looking for their next wrestler at Comic-Con. That's funny. PCW 24/7 says that was awful about that AEW segment. I don't get the whole thing. I see those Dark Order guys as low card guys. As I said before, the one guy is short, the better in shape guy of the two. I forget his name. Does a lot of leg slapping. And the other guy's fat. And when they wrestled around here, they were both comedy wrestlers, always in lower card matches. I don't know. I mean, they're obviously friends with one of the executives. For them to get their jobs out of all of the talent in Canada, that they could have given jobs to the Davey Boy Smiths of the world, the Ted Harts of the world, the Rene Duprees of the world, and they're going to give the jobs to Dark Order. I don't know. They're sucking up to the right people is all I can say. And speaking of Rene Dupree, he's very angry at Conrad Thompson for trying to start a rumor on Jim Ross's Armageddon 2004 podcast that Rene had some sort of sexual thing going on with Pat Patterson. I am an investigator of wrestling, and I definitely know all about the Canadian wrestlers that have made it. And I've never, ever heard a rumor of Rene Dupree and Pat Patterson. I mean, I've always had little bit less respect for Conrad. He does have some good podcasts. I will give him that. I listen to quite a few of them, but there's been oftentimes he's quoted stuff from my interviews and he never credits me. When Steve Austin has taken information from my interviews, he's always credited me. And he's a way bigger star than Conrad. And Jim Ross, for instance, retweeted my tweet about the mistake they made with Rene and apologized. And then they've already put out a new episode, and there was no mention so far yet on the correction they made when they were talking about the rumors between Pat Patterson and a member of La Resistance. Those were always Sylvain Grenier. Rene Dupree has been wrestling in the UK, Japan, Canada, the US, all over the place. He's been very active since he left WWE. He's a second generation wrestler. He does not deserve to be painted with the same brush as Grenier, who Patterson had discovered in a strip club, and they are close friends. And I like Grenier, nothing against him, but the rumors are about Grenier, not Rene. Krilling876 tips me $2 and says, can I get Joey Styles for a shoot interview? I only ever met Joey Styles once. That was during Matt Rats. I've never seen him since, but I would be open to doing a shoot interview with Joey Styles for sure. It's bound to happen. I really love the ECW guys. And I've always had great reaction to the ECW shoot interviews. What's his name? Scorpio is coming to Great North Wrestling February 29th in Smith Falls, just outside of Ottawa towards Kingston, Ontario. And I plan on getting another follow-up shoot with Too Cool Scorpio. Then I also have one coming up with Sabu before his PCW Ultra appearance in LA, January 10th. Go to pcwultra.com for more information on that one. Ralph Vaqueros' interview New Jack. Yeah, for sure. I'll interview New Jack one day. I just haven't. I only met him before I started doing interviews, and that was very brief in an elevator. Lance Archer was backstage at the AEW show in Corpus Christi. Sorry. That show drew 3,100 people. Now I'm going to go back. That's about all the daily news update. The only other thing in the news that I've already reported was former Puerto Rican wrestler Apollo, who was in TNA, is fighting on the Combate Americas card in January against an 0-3 wrestler. So Sorry, an 0-3 MMA fighter. So that's going to be interesting because I used to be friends with Apollo and I never knew him to be a fighter. He is fighting a guy that's 0-3 in Puerto Rico. I'm sure it's going to be in his favor, but I find it interesting. He's stepping into the cage. Is Josh Barnett okay? Richard Mins is asking me. They haven't released exactly the exact reason why he failed, other than he isn't well. Back to the news. In Ring of Honor news, this is all the rest of the Wrestling Observer news, by the way, that I didn't finish yesterday. Their Madison Square Garden event this year, that was a combined show with New Japan, that basically all the tickets were sold to when they thought Cody Rhodes and all the AEW guys were going to be on it. That show selling out gave them a huge gross revenue for this year, probably the biggest gross of their existence. However, their Baltimore Final Battle pay-per-view only drew about 1,000 fans, and their Philadelphia TV taping a few days later, December 15th, only drew 350 fans. Now they have a new champion now, PCO. They're using a new announcer, Brian Zane from Wrestling with Regret, who I actually did a Skype interview with earlier today that will be posted on here this weekend. Good idea hiring Brian Zane, Ring of Honor. He has a YouTube following, so obviously his YouTube viewers are going to watch. So that's a smart idea, using wrestlers and wrestling personalities in wrestling companies who have YouTube followings rather than just bringing on random people that, quite frankly, are unknown. So hopefully Ring of Honor turns it around next year. I am on their side. There was no pay-per-view buy rate released for the NWA's pay-per-view, and Impact haven't released their pay-per-view buy rates for a very long time, which probably tells you why. Another person, there was a note in the Wrestling Observer about the NWA's YouTube viewership, which I can tell you. I mean, it's been going down consistently, but as far as viewers on YouTube compared to TV ratings, the difference is with TV ratings, you know how many people are watching per segment. YouTube, people just have to watch a certain amount of the video and it counts as a hit. I'm not exactly sure what percentage it is, but it's some type of percentage of the video for it to count as a hit. So people, like, say the last time I checked this week's episode of NWA, it had about 42,000 views. Now, did those people only watch 15 minutes or did they watch all the way to the main event? I don't know. Apparently, Marty Squirrel, who I've been told his name is actually Squirrel, thought his name was Scroll. Sorry, all you fans I offended. I don't know much about him. I've never really seen Ring of Honor other than PCO highlights. But apparently he still has possibly some future bookings with Ring of Honor. He might no longer be under contract to him. It appears he's going to be the next challenger for Nick Aldis's NWA title, according to the Wrestling Observer, even though Squirrel said in an interview on NWA that he was friends with Aldis, but they also released a group picture from both Ring of Honor and NWA that I've already talked about this week. So there isn't much kayfabing feuds with either of those companies, but apparently Aldis is also supposed to fight the Great Muta over the title too. So if the Squirrel match happens before the Muta match, you know the title's not going to change hands. But it's obvious they're keeping the title on him for a long time anyways, because he turned down an AEW contract over that. Krilling876 with another $2 tip. Thank you. Any up Ventura? IMO was the best commentator ever. Anything up with Jesse Ventura? I don't know, but I want it. My goal for 2020 in interviews is to interview Jesse Ventura. But you know what? Krilling, I will. I know he goes away for the winter to Mexico usually, but I'll check. I'll check into what he's up to, and I'm going to report on it. Jamie Holloway, have I ever met Owen Hart? I only saw him live in action many times. But I never met him. By the time I started with the Hearts, it was after he passed away. Coach G, all this needs some comparably solid baby faces to beat to give him some credibility. I don't know. I would just I would put someone like Davey Boy Smith Jr. as the champion, a guy that could really beat 99% of wrestlers probably out there today. All this isn't a real shooter. He's not a true heel. A lot of people don't even. Some people were saying, "Oh, he turned heel on the last tapings." He's always been a heel, but then he shows up in this group picture. Like, I don't know. Not a fan of him, guys, but I do think he's a better NWA champion than this Marty Squirrel would make, because I saw a picture of the two together, and the Squirrel guy looks like a complete midget next to all this. At least all this is tall, well-built. I'll give him that. There's just certain characteristics of a champion I don't believe he possesses. In other news, MLW is bringing in Killer Cross for their February event. Killer Cross has been released by Impact, who were pretty much holding him hostage. The company is also bringing in AAA Lucha Libre talent through Conan. Taz, speaking of ECW, is leaving CBS Sports Radio, where he's been working the past 2 years. He did do a commentary for AEW Dark when they were in Philadelphia in October. So who knows what he's leaving CBS Sports Radio for. Sounds like that would be a pretty good gig, other than the fact I think he had to live in New York City, which would just be a nightmare to live in. The movie Jumanji, starring The Rock, is beat the predictions for last weekend. They expected it to make 50 million. It made almost 60 million. Krilling 876, thanks for the $2 tip again. Do I think the idea of a rooster is stupid? Are you speaking about the Terry Taylor gimmick, or do you mean roster? But if you're talking about Terry Taylor's Red Rooster gimmick, I think it could have got over more. And Terry Taylor has said that himself. If he had been into that gimmick more, it would have got over more. In that era of gimmick, he wasn't the only rooster, by the way. There was another rooster before him that wrestled in AWA. But yeah, I think the gimmick could have done better, but not all gimmicks work. There's been worse gimmicks than the Red Rooster, far worse gimmicks. Mantar was far worse, in my opinion. The Goon was worse. I hate the Joey Ryan gimmick. That was worse than the Red Rooster, in my opinion. Bellator news. I already talked about Josh Barnett. Rory McDonald, who I've grappled with before and done some takedown training with. He has left Bellator to sign with this PFL company, which I guess offered him more money than Bellator, is the reason why he's jumping. Bellator has 2 shows in Honolulu this week, the one tonight, one tomorrow. In UFC news, UFC and ESPN announced their pay-per-view prices will be raised from $59.99 to $64.99, starting with the McGregor versus Cerrone fight. Kane just tipped me $1 with the letters CHF, which I don't know what that stands for. But thanks. Every little bit of money adds up to my monthly pay on here. So I really appreciate anyone that gives me anything, because I've been funding all these interviews myself for years. And anyone that joins my patreon.com/the Hannibal TV, you get to watch the full shoot interviews ad-free before they're posted on YouTube. And it helps not only this channel grow, but Great North Wrestling grow. Another UFC news, their show last weekend, UFC 245, the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, drew 16,811 fans, more than any wrestling show has drawn in a long time that has, other than WrestleMania, for a gate of $4,041,119. It was the third event held at the T-Mobile Arena this year and the highest attended event of the year. Oh, CHF means Swiss dollars, someone's telling me so. Kane donated me $1 Swiss. I guess you're from Switzerland. Thank you. I did not even know I had viewers from Switzerland. A lot of people think we're most viewed in Canada. Only 7% of the Hannibal TV's viewers are Canadian. It is by far American viewers. Then it's Europe, basically the UK. Canada is usually fourth or fifth on the list. Surprisingly, but we have less people. I think that's why. Sorry, I need a drink from my Popeyes supplement glass. If any supplement companies ever want me to test out their supplements, I'll be happy to do that, by the way. I spend a fortune on them. Steve Dials says Cowboy will do what he always does in relation to the Conor McGregor. Jamie Holloway, how is Sid in person? Sid, I have known since 2008. For a wrestler, he's a nice guy. As far as ego, his ego is very, very low. He's very down to earth. Krilling876, another $2 tip. Thanks a lot, buddy. Are you familiar with HOG Sonya Strong? That's House of Glory Wrestling's Sonya Strong. The only match I've ever seen of House of Glory Wrestling is my buddy, UFC Hall of Famers, Stephan Bonner's. I think it's the only match he had for them. Maybe he's had more, but his match. So I don't have a clue who Sonya Strong is. No. The Tito Ortiz versus Alberto Del Rio fight, was reported to have drawn 3.1 million viewers on Televisa in Mexico, which is pretty good. But apparently Mexican ratings aren't always on the up and up. However, they have not released the pay-per-view buy rate for that fight, which means that just like in Impact and Ring of Honor's case, the pay-per-view buy rate is probably embarrassing to put out there. By the way, I am debating, put it in the comments of this video, people that watch this. I haven't reached out to them yet, but when I'm in LA next month, does anyone want to see me do a part 2 with Tito Ortiz? There are quite a few new questions I actually have for him. I don't know if he'll be around, but I'm thinking of doing a part 2 with Tito Ortiz. My part 1 interview with him is on there. And if anyone didn't see it, Tito Ortiz easily beat Alberto Del Rio. But props to Del Rio for getting in there in a match. I mean, he was paid very well for it, but you know you're going to take a beating going in there with a UFC Hall of Famer. So he went in there and he took his beating. I guess, by the way, for that Tito Ortiz fight, they actually sold it out. It was a smaller arena in McAllen, Texas. Sorry, it was a sellout, 7,000 fans. And they did admit the pay-per-view numbers were weak. So that's the rest of my Wrestling Observer news. Who is my favorite metal band? Motor Sash says the Scorpions, if you want to consider them metal. The Real Frisco. Bill Apter recently interviewed him, gained so much weight. Who's that? Jesse Ventura? Coach G. Oh, by the way, Bill Apter is actually not going to be working for the Hannibal TV at WrestleCon. There's been some changes. We're actually going to have a table this year now for WrestleCon in Tampa. I think it's April 3rd and 4th. And Billy Jack Haynes is going to be at that table along with his buddy Rip Oliver from Portland Wrestling. And I'll probably, I don't know if I'm 100% going to be doing it, but I'll probably be the one doing the interviews that weekend. A lot of repeat questions, so sorry, I don't want to answer the same questions every day for you people. Sorry about that. Do I know how Dutch Mantel is? Is he with AEW? I guarantee you Dutch Mantel is not with AEW. I haven't seen him lately. He did tweet. He tweeted something to me about a month or so ago related to an injury that a Japanese female wrestler had. They should hire him as creative because their creative is not very good. I think Chris Jericho is doing his own creative. That's why his segments are better in general, from what I understand. I haven't seen too many of them. Overall, I've heard reports that the creative is very bad for AEW. Ralph Vaquero says, thanks for the interview. Krilling876, how is Tank Abbott's health? He's recovering from kidney and liver transplants. I've done a few Skype interviews with him recently. He was very curious to know. He did talk to me like last week if I knew the buys for the Tito Ortiz versus Alberto fight. Tank really hates Ortiz. His hatred to Ortiz is all a shoot. Steve Dodge says the Scorpions are another Marty Jannetty shoot. Patrick J is asking, will there be another Marty Jannetty shoot? Yes. It was supposed to have already happened already, but for whatever reason it didn't. I hope he's okay. Haven't heard much from him. Health status of Perry Saturn, I have no idea. Tony R. Seth Rollins is no Paul Ellering, and APO is no LOD. No, but those AOP, I don't really know them that well, but one of them is a legitimately very good amateur wrestler. I do know that. PWC 24/7, who do I see Jericho losing the title to? I haven't watched AEW, so I don't know. He should stay champ. There's no one else there right now that's more popular or more mainstream known than him, so he should keep the title for the foreseeable future. By the way, some people have commented, like all these crazy CM Punk fans, yes, he would have made a huge difference in AEW. They need more star power, more difference than he's making in WWE. But a lot of people are saying, oh, they'd be getting 1 million viewers a show if they had CM Punk. Well, he's barely affected the ratings on WWE Backstage. They actually went down the last time he's on it, just over 100,000 viewers. So he's not really as popular as he once was. Those two embarrassing losses. The second one was really embarrassing in the UFC. Was bad. Plus, have any of you ever seen the YouTube video on this channel of when I was kicked out of a WWE event because I was basically showing that there was nobody at that event? Guess who was the headliner for that event? CM Punk. He was not the draw that everyone seems to want to remember that he was some draw that turned the business around. The business was better then for WWE as far as ratings and attendance as a whole, but it's just been a downward trend, unfortunately for wrestling. Hopefully wrestling makes a comeback though. I really hope so, but I hope so because I'm in the wrestling business and I have a wrestling company, and when the TV product sucks, it makes it more difficult all the way through wrestling. Because what are you going to do when you're going around these towns putting up posters, for instance, like I do? You got to explain to everyone, oh, this is not like the stuff you're seeing on TV, because they want to tell you how bad this stuff is on TV. You got to like explain how your stuff is different. But the general consensus from the mainstream these days is they're not interested in wrestling. When it's on in the gym I work out at that has many, many TVs in it, people are not watching the wrestling channel. Anthony Shabbat trying to get to a wrestling school. Any advice? Go to someone that has a good history of getting people into major companies. Jamie Holloway, was John Cena the last true big star of wrestling? The last true big stars were Austin and The Rock. John Cena never reached their level as far as attendance and like popping the business as a whole, but him and Brock Lesnar are the last stars. John Cena is definitely a bigger star than anyone other than Brock Lesnar in the WWE right now. But Brock Lesnar is not touring around, and the house show business is terrible. They're hardly even doing any house shows. And if you want to know their recent house show numbers, just watch my Wrestling Observer review from yesterday. I gave them. Hearing 1 million viewers today versus 10 million back then is sad. Yeah. And the difference is for you younger fans in the Attitude Era and in the 80s, like you would see people walking around wearing wrestling shirts. Average people were talking about wrestling. I remember when The Rock had his "it doesn't matter what your name is" thing. Everybody was doing it. Like people that you wouldn't even expect to do wrestling, fans were doing the old "it doesn't matter," trying to set you up for that. And like there's nobody talking about wrestling today, like other than the super wrestling fans. Like Bobby Heenan said, the magic is gone. They told everyone it's not real and how everything is done. And it doesn't help when you shove it in people's faces, like these group pictures. You got to at least try a little bit. Eric Foster says, I can't believe the bumps PCO takes at his age. Amazing. He is dedicated to getting over, and I hope that he does well in Ring of Honor. Maybe, by the way, PCO said he might do another shoot interview with me sometime in the next few weeks. So you might get another PCO interview. He did say he asked just after he was in Ring of Honor if he tried to get me in Ring of Honor. But they told him the exact quote was, they want to bring in people from the wrestling school now rather than people like me, which made no sense. Why wouldn't you want a guy that has a whole YouTube channel and has wrestled all these people? But maybe now that he's the champion, he'll have more pull if he does well. Someone's given me a tip, and I'll make this the last question of the night because I've been going on a while now. Don't look at my channel. It gives me $2. Thoughts on AEW Revolution selling out? Well, I've said it. It's in Chicago. They didn't sell out their Dynamite taping there, but they're known for Chicago. It's a pay-per-view, and they're also doing it in association with this Comic-Con. So there's a lot of people come in for this Comic-Con. So that helps as well. So good for them that they've sold it out, because with that punches that we saw this week that's making its rounds of the internet. I don't think that's going to help. We've seen the attendance go down, and we've seen ratings are going down. They were the network was expecting them to get around 500,000 an episode. They started off really exceeding that, and then they've been dropping week after week. This last week, they were only just over 600,000. So it would have almost been better for them to have been under 500,000 to start and be climbing than start really high and keep going down. Because what's going to happen, I don't know how long that contract is, but when the contract renewal time is, if they're below the 500,000 by that point, that'll be interesting. All right, guys, I'm out of here. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for your tips and your questions.